Hello, it's been a while, but I'm back, and nice to see you here as well. Now, today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a show and tell of something that I didn't actually make. Very kindly, I've been given access to this original screen-used Attack of the Cyberman Gun prop by a very good friend of mine because, well, he thought that you might like to see it. Now, it's not every day that you get to have a good look at something so unique as this, all up close and personal like, so my sincere thanks go to him for this opportunity. So, keep watching, and I'll walk you through this iconic 1980s Cyberman prop. Before we look at the prop, let's just have a quick dive into the history of this 1980s Cybergun design, because I think it's worth it just to set the scene. Freelance prop and model maker Martin Bauer designed and made 8 Cybermen guns for the Peter Davison era story Earthshock. However, because of the nature in which they were built, predominantly from EMA plastic tubing and various pieces of houseware all stuck together, they were quite fragile, especially at the business end where it was separated from the main body of the gun by a very narrow tube. Unfortunately, this feature made them exceedingly prone to snapping at this point, and you know what actors are like, they tend to break everything. On screen, this fragility is woefully apparent. There are several prominent scenes in which you can clearly see these guns being held and bound together with gaffer tape, due to the rough handling. At the climax of the story in which the Doctor kills the cyber leader with his own gun, it's more than obvious that actor Peter Davison is physically holding the two broken sections together. You can literally see them drift out of alignment. For the next story, the 20th anniversary adventure The Five Doctors in 1983, the guns were almost entirely rebuilt from scratch, and the design was modified to make the props more durable, most notably by eliminating that narrow tube separator and improving the way in which they were held together. Now, Martin Bauer wasn't involved with this and was understandably rather unhappy about it. 2 years later, for Colin Baker's second story, Attack of the Cybermen, all the surviving guns from the previous story were adapted, and new ones were made to bulk up the numbers. To freshen up the look, all the guns were now given a variety of dome details and painted in a metallic pale green rather than the traditional silver. One notable addition is that the new build sported a different firing mechanism. On the older models, a very obvious doorbell push button was used to activate the internal lamp that indicated that the guns were firing, but the new versions dispensed with this in favour of a hidden contact switch situated underneath a flexible strip of plastic. There was one standout gun in this story that makes it easily identifiable and wholly unique, and that is the weapon as used by the sewer guard Cyberman. Although 2 guards appeared on screen, they were never actually seen together, suggesting that there was only one costume made, plus a duplicate special effects version for the exploding death sequence at the hands of the Doctor. Unlike all the other standard issue guns, the one used by the sewer guard Cybermen was painted in a reddy orange livery, and that is the prop that I'll be showing you today. Now, this example comes from the collection of an ex-BBC employee who had all manner of original props and models from a variety of different film and TV franchises. From what we understand, this was the centrepiece of his collection and understandably a prized possession. But when he obtained it from the BBC, it was in a somewhat damaged state by way of a few missing parts, and so he elected to restore it. Unfortunately for us, there's simply no documentation on precisely what was done, other than a single low-resolution photograph taken not long after the work was completed, and so it took a bit of detective work to try and fathom out precisely what repairs were performed here. Consequently, the big question that surrounds this prop is, how restored is it? The first thing to note about this particular gun is that not only does it look genuine, with all the right parts, the correct detailing, and the various tells associated with these guns, but it also is constructed in the way you'd expect a BBC original to be. Now, I grant you that these guns are very easy to replicate, but only if you know certain things, which admittedly the chap concerned here was. However, in the case of this prop, I do believe it to be genuine, just because of the way he was so very precious about it. Having looked at this prop both inside and out, I do believe that the restoration work was constrained to just the business end section, and here's why I think this. If you look closely at the finish on the air freshener here, while you can see that it's the right colour, the hue does look, at least to the human eye, very slightly duller than the rest of it. Ordinarily, when you paint something, you build up the colour intensity through its successive passes, and here on the end, it does just look a bit patchy in places, especially when you compare it to the rest of the gun. So maybe the repaired section just got given a basic covering pass. Also of note, The finish in this region is applied directly over grey primer, whereas the other areas of the gun does appear to show signs of silver having been once under the red, particularly on the upper handle here, where some of the paint has worn away in a few spots. Now what this means, if this is the case, is that this gun can't have been specifically built for Attack of the Cybermen, and must have been constructed from parts made for the previous story, The Five Doctors, which were then repurposed as I spoke about earlier on. The other major detail that supports this theory is that the ribbed grip detail here on the handle is moulded in just as it is in The Five Doctors, but not in Earthshock. For that initial story, the detailing was purely tape applied to a handle that sported no relief element on it whatsoever. Interestingly, whilst inspecting the handle, I noticed that it's magnetic. Now at first I thought that maybe metal powder had been added to the resin to give it more weight, but I soon discovered that this wasn't the case, as it's only magnetic down its left-hand side, which leads me to posit that there's more than likely a metal rod embedded in there to give it extra strength. And that would make sense. But anyway, back to the subject of paint though. I did question whether or not the whole of this gun had been resprayed, and if that's so, then all of the foil trim that you can see here would be replacements. However, I'm not entirely convinced of this because there are several chips in the paint that appears to have a pinky red touch-up colour applied to try and conceal the damage, and it doesn't match the rest of the paint in the slightest. Now, I would venture a guess that maybe this was done very early on, perhaps even before the restoration proper, but there's just no way to tell to be certain. Something else that caught my eye is the pinstriping on this lens here. This is masking tape painted black rather than the usual black Fablon, and that could suggest that this is a redo. But having said that, there are other examples out there that are original that have this feature as well. Sticking with the lens, the clear tubing itself could actually be a replacement, though I am doubtful though, as the internal connector element looks contemporary, and most telling of all is that the holes for the screws that hold this assembly together all line up perfectly with one another, suggesting that they're all drilled at the same time rather than being offered up later as a replacement. If it was added later, you'd expect to see a small amount of misalignment, and that just isn't present here. So that only leaves the end, right where we began this video, at the Rizzler air freshener and the caster cup here. As I said previously, this is where I believe the restoration work was centred around, and it seems highly likely that these are replacements, as they do appear to have the merest whiff of paint applied compared to the rest of the gun. Also, these parts are quite well known for getting damaged and lost, so it kind of makes sense that they are a later addition. So, what do I think of this prop then? Well, this is a great example of a one-off prop, and a highly identifiable one at that, because it was the only one produced in this unique colour scheme. It even leans towards orange when you see it under harsh lighting, just as it did on screen. Now, I'm pretty convinced that this is the real deal, albeit conservatively restored, though it does have some areas of damage in evidence. There's a huge crack on the rear of the handle here, a number of paint chips across the piece, and some of the pinstriping on the lens barrel is starting to peel away, but despite all this, it's still in a very displayable condition. Some collectors will, however, want their pieces like this to remain untouched, but you can argue for and against that. Would you rather have your prop in an untampered with production use state, with the extra bonus of having years of aging and decay that comes with it to produce a rather shitty looking prop, or would you prefer it to be reconditioned to have your original prop looking just as it did on screen? Of course, this all depends on the collector. Here, it was damaged and missing a few parts, so the owner elected to utilise his skills to restore it to its full former beauty. Does this devalue it? Some would argue that it does, but then you do have classic cars and bikes that get restored and retain or even exceed their original value once done. A case in point, just recently, a fully restored original Eagle transporter model from the series Space 1999 sold at auction for almost £130,000. Crazy! But there you are, it's all horses for courses really, and it's purely down to personal taste. Either way, I'd be happy to have this in my collection if I had the desire to own original props, that is, which rather frankly I don't. So, what's your thoughts on restoring props? I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Should they be left well alone, or carefully and respectfully restored? Tell me in the comments down below. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching.